Chosen one, feel your shoulders right now, not as a metaphor. Literally, just notice them. Feel where they are sitting. Feel what they are holding. I am going to make a guess. I think your shoulders have been higher than they should be for a while now. Tighter. Held up, like they are bracing for something that has not arrived yet. And if you have been honest with yourself lately, you know that tension is not about work or noise or being physically tired. It is something deeper than that. Something quieter. Something that follows you from the moment you wake up until the moment you finally close your eyes at night. It is the weight of a financial season that should have turned by now. Let me say something before anything else. I know how tired you are. Not the kind of tired that a good night of sleep fixes. This is different. This is the kind of tiredness that comes from carrying something heavy for so long that you have stopped remembering what it felt like to put it down. The kind that comes from praying and believing and staying faithful, and then waking up the next morning to find that the gap between where you are and where you need to be has not moved. You checked a number recently, maybe this morning, maybe last night before you turned the light off, maybe a few days ago, but it is still sitting in the back of your mind right now, the way those numbers do. A bank account, a balance, a bill that keeps coming back, a number that should be different than it is. And when you looked at it in that private, quiet moment, when no one else was watching, something in your chest got tight. Not panic, not even sadness exactly. Just that familiar, exhausting feeling of doing everything right and still coming up short. The feeling of a person who has been showing up faithfully, trusting quietly, and wondering in their most honest moments whether the promises are actually real for everyone else, and somehow just do not apply to them. I want to sit with you in that for just a moment before we go anywhere else, because what I am about to share is not for the person who is casually curious today. It is for the person who needs it to be real, who needs what is coming to actually come, who has been holding on with everything they have, and who is running low on the kind of fuel that willpower and positive thinking can provide. If that is you, I need you to stay with me, because I am not here today to make you feel better for the next 20 minutes and then send you back to the same circumstances unchanged. I am here because there is a pattern, a real, documented, traceable pattern that appears in every tradition that has ever studied. What happens when a person who has been in a long and difficult financial wilderness finally receives a breakthrough? And that pattern, when you understand it clearly, when you can see exactly where you are inside it, changes everything. A large and unexpected provision is already in motion toward your life. I want to say that one more time. A large and unexpected provision is already in motion toward your life. I know what happened in your mind when I said that. Part of you leaned forward, and part of you immediately put a wall up. Because that part, the part that has been disappointed before, the part that has heard hopeful words that did not land, the part that learned to protect itself from hoping too openly, that part is not sure it can afford to be wrong again. I understand that completely, and I am not going to ask you to silence it. But I want to ask you one question, and I want you to actually consider it before your mind moves past it. What if the wall you just built is the only thing standing between you and what is already on its way? Here is what most teachings on financial breakthrough leave out entirely. Most of them tell you to believe more, to speak it with confidence, to align your energy, to write it down and declare it every morning. And you have done all of that. You have done every version of it. But believing is not the same as being ready. There is a critical difference between a person who trusts that provision is coming and a person who has done the deep internal work to actually receive what is coming without walking right past it, without unknowingly pushing it away, without doing what most people do when large unexpected provision arrives before they were built to hold it. And here is the most important thing I need you to understand before we go any further. The person who receives a large and unexpected financial breakthrough is almost never the person who seems most prepared on the surface. It is not the most organized person. It is not the most strategically positioned, the most visible, the most vocal in their believing. It is the one who went through something first. The one who spent time in a season that looked like delay, like loss, like being quietly passed over, and who stayed faithful anyway, who did not quit, who did not let it make them bitter, who kept showing up in the dark, in the private, in the quiet when there was no applause and no visible evidence and no reason to continue except for the knowing inside them that they were supposed to. That is the one who receives it. And I believe, with everything in me, that person is you. I cannot give you the exact date. I cannot name the specific amount or the precise channel through which it arrives, but I can give you something more valuable than either of those things. I can give you the pattern, the framework, the body of evidence from scripture, from neuroscience, from the documented lives of people across every generation who walked this exact road that shows you where you are inside this story right now. That shows you what season always comes directly before this kind of shift. And that shows you what you need to understand today so you do not accidentally miss what is already on its way. Something is moving toward your life. It has been moving longer than you realize, and there is something happening in this season, something that most people walk through without ever recognizing for what it is that tells you exactly where you are in the pattern of divine provision. I am going to show you what that is. There is also something that has been quietly limiting the channel through which that provision wants to arrive. Something internal, something that operates below the level of belief and intention and spiritual practice. Something that most financial teachings never address, because it requires going somewhere more honest and more precise than most people are willing to go. I am going to take you there too. And I need you to stay with me through all of it. Because what is waiting for you at the end of this message, the clarity, the declaration, the practical tools, the understanding of exactly who you are in this season, that is why this message was placed in front of you today. So let me tell you what you are going to receive by the time this is done. You are going to understand why the season you are in is not what it looks like, and why the delay you have been experiencing was never punishment. You are going to see 5 specific signs already showing up in your life right now that confirm exactly where you are in this pattern. You are going to understand the 2 internal forces that are quietly blocking unexpected provision from arriving even when everything else is aligned, and how to release them. You are going to learn something from neuroscience and from the lives of people who received exactly what you are waiting for, that will shift the way you see your own mind in this season. And at the end of this message, I am going to speak a declaration over your life that I believe you will carry with you long after this is over. All of it is here. Stay with me. Now, let me start with a scene. And I want you to let it be real, not just a story you observe from the outside, but something you step into. It is late at night, the kind of late where everything else has gone quiet, and the rest of the world is asleep, but you are still awake. Maybe you are in the kitchen with a glass of water, sitting at the table where you pay the bills. Maybe you are lying in bed with the light off, staring at a ceiling you know by heart. Maybe you are in your car, parked in the driveway, needing just a few more minutes before you go inside and be strong for everyone else again. And in that stillness, that honest, unguarded stillness, the thought comes. The same thought that has been visiting you for months, maybe for years. When is this going to change? Not if. You moved past if a long time ago. You know something is supposed to shift. You know the season you are in is not your permanent address. You know you are called to more than this, not because you are arrogant, but because there is something inside you that has been carrying that knowing since before you fully understood it. But when? That question has been harder to silence, because the answer keeps being not yet, and the weight of not yet, when it accumulates over time, becomes something you carry in your body, not just in your mind. Your chest is a little tighter these days than it used to be. Your sleep is lighter. Your prayers have gotten more honest, less polished, less composed, sometimes just the kind of raw and wordless reaching that happens when you have run out of the proper language for what you feel. And in those quiet hours, when the house is still and the performance is over, and no one needs anything from you, there is a fear that lives underneath all of it. The fear that maybe you are the exception. The fear that the stories of sudden provision, of unexpected breakthrough, of doors opening that no one could shut, maybe those stories are real, but your name quietly got left off the list. Maybe the pattern works for other people, and something about your particular situation, your particular history, your particular combination of mistakes and delays and timing, maybe that puts you in a category where the general rules just do not apply. I need you to hear me clearly. That fear is not truth. It is not prophecy. It is not a spiritual signal. It is not the voice of wisdom telling you something real about your future. It is the voice of a season that has lasted long enough to start sounding like a sentence. And I am here to tell you, that season is not your sentence. It is your formation. Now, here is where I want to go deeper, because I think you have heard things about the waiting season before. You have heard the spiritual language around it. You have been told to trust the process. You have been told that God's timing is perfect, and those things are true, but truth without clarity is not always useful. And I think some of what you have been told about the waiting has actually been working against you without you realizing it. There are 3 specific lies that circulate in the space of people who believe in spiritual provision, and I want to name them directly because I think at least one of them has taken up residence in some corner of your mind, and it is time to evict it. The first lie is this: if the provision has not come yet, it means you did not believe correctly. This is one of the most quietly destructive ideas in the spiritual space, and it is insidious because it sounds like accountability. It sounds like it is holding you to a high standard. But what it actually does is take the entire weight of divine timing and place it on your shoulders, and then tell you that every single delay is your fault. Think about what that does to a person over time. It creates a kind of spiritual exhaustion that is very hard to recover from, because no matter how faithfully you believe, there is always something you could have done more of. There is always a formula you did not perform precisely enough. There is always a reason to wonder whether your belief was just slightly too small, or your doubts just slightly too loud. That is not how provision works. Provision does not operate on the schedule of your belief performance. It operates on the schedule of your preparation. And preparation is not something you perform. It is something that happens to you, in you, through the specific circumstances of a specific season, over a specific amount of time that is not yours to determine. The farmer does not make the harvest happen by believing harder during winter. The farmer receives the harvest by staying faithful to the process, tending what is in their hands, trusting what is underneath the ground, and being present in the field when the season turns. You did not delay your provision by failing to believe correctly. You are in the season that is building the capacity to receive what is coming. The second lie is more subtle, and it is more dangerous for that reason. The second lie is this: the financial breakthrough is the reward for your faithfulness. Now, I want to be careful here, because this one contains a real truth that makes it very easy to absorb without examining it closely. Yes, faithfulness matters. Yes, character is being formed in the waiting. Yes, there is a relationship between what is being built in you and what is coming to you. But the moment you frame provision as a reward, as something you earn by suffering long enough, by praying hard enough, by checking off enough spiritual boxes, you have fundamentally misunderstood what unexpected provision actually is. Unexpected provision does not operate like a reward system. It operates like a harvest, and those are not the same thing. A reward is transactional. You do X, you receive Y. If you do enough X's in the right order, the Y is owed to you. This framework turns the divine into a kind of cosmic transaction processor, and it turns you into someone who is constantly calculating whether you have done enough to qualify. A harvest is different. A harvest is the natural conclusion of a planting. It is not owed to you because you were good. It is not withheld from you because you were imperfect. It arrives when the seed has done what seeds do, when the root system is deep enough, when the season has turned, when what was planted in the ground has grown to fullness. Your job has never been to earn the harvest. Your job has been to stay in the field, to tend what is in your hands, to trust the ground even when you cannot see what is happening underneath it, and that is exactly what you have been doing. The third lie is the quietest one, and it has done more damage to more people in your position than the other two combined. The third lie is this: the provision will come through the door you have been watching. You know exactly which door I mean. Maybe it is a specific job or career opportunity. Maybe it is a business relationship, a partnership, a deal that has been in process for a long time. Maybe it is a person you thought would come through for you. Maybe it is a channel you have been preparing and positioning yourself to step through when it finally opens. You have been watching that door, praying at it, positioning yourself near it, preparing yourself to walk through it the moment it swings open. But here is the truth that changes the entire landscape of this conversation. Unexpected provision, by its very definition, cannot come through the door you have been watching. If it came through the door you expected, it would not be unexpected. And the provision that is moving toward your life right now, the large, disproportionate, season-shifting provision described in the title of this message, is specifically called unexpected for a reason. It means the channel through which it arrives is a channel you were not monitoring, which means right now, one of the most important things you can do is not intensify your focus on the doors you have been watching. It is to release the grip, to open your periphery, to allow the possibility that what is coming is arriving through a window you have not been guarding, and that if your attention is entirely locked on one door, you might miss the window. There is a reason the provision has not arrived in the form you expected, and the reason is not what you think. I want to come back to that, because what I am about to show you about the nature of unexpected provision channels and why they operate the way they do is one of the most practically important pieces of this entire message. But first, I need to show you what is actually happening in this season, not the surface of it, not the spiritual language version of it. The deep structural reality of why a formation season is not a waiting room and why the distinction between those two things changes everything. A waiting room is passive. You sit in it until your name is called. The waiting room does not change you. You do not grow in a waiting room. You do not develop anything. You simply endure the time until something external happens that releases you. Most people experience their financial wilderness as a waiting room. They are holding their lives in suspension, not fully committing to the season they are in, not fully investing in what is present, because they are waiting for the season to change before they begin to live the life they are supposed to be living. They are waiting to exhale, waiting to begin, waiting for the provision to arrive so the real story can start. But that is not what is happening to you. What has been happening to you in the quiet, in the constraint, in the years of doing more with less, in the seasons of praying through difficulty without immediate answers, is formation. And formation is the opposite of passive. Formation is one of the most actively constructive processes in the entire created order. Think of what it takes to form a diamond. Think of what it takes to build the root system of an old oak tree, that invisible underground architecture that can hold the tree through storms that would flatten anything with shallower roots. Think of what it takes to form a human character that is deep enough, flexible enough, wise enough, and grounded enough to carry large provision without being destroyed by it. That kind of formation does not happen in comfortable seasons. It has never happened in comfortable seasons. And there are three specific things that a formation season produces that cannot be produced any other way. The first is capacity. Here is a truth that most provision teachings skip past entirely, and it is one of the most important structural realities in this conversation. You cannot receive more than you are built to hold. This is not a metaphor, and it is not spiritual language for be humble. It is a practical, observable, real-world truth. A person who receives a large and sudden financial resource before they have developed the internal infrastructure to manage it, before they have the wisdom, the discipline, the relational discernment, the emotional regulation, the identity stability, will lose it. The statistics on lottery winners are well documented. The stories of sudden inheritance squandered are so common they barely surprise us anymore. This is not because those people were bad. It is because the vessel was not built for what arrived. What has been happening in your financial wilderness is not God withholding from you. It is the process of building from the inside out, a vessel that can hold what is coming without it slipping through. Every season of financial constraint that forced you to make wise decisions with limited resources was building financial wisdom you cannot learn in a classroom. Every season where you had to do more with less was building a discipline and a creativity that will serve you differently when the resources multiply. Every season of waiting that tested whether you could keep your character intact under pressure was building something in you that large provision requires in its steward. The capacity is being built. The second thing that forms in a wilderness season is character, and I want to be very specific about which character qualities I mean, because this is not generic encouragement. There are qualities that are only forged in hardship. That is not pessimism. That is a law. Patience, that is deep enough to hold steady when there is no visible evidence. That is not a quality you develop when everything is going well. It is developed precisely in the seasons when everything looks like it is not going well, and you choose to hold steady anyway. Discernment sharp enough to recognize opportunity in unexpected form, because unexpected provision does not always announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it looks like an ordinary conversation. Sometimes it looks like a closed door that opens sideways. The person who has been trained by a long season of waiting learns to notice things that a person who has never waited simply does not have the perceptual equipment to see. Humility pressed into you by seasons where you had to ask for help, where you had to admit what you could not manage alone. This is not smallness. It is the specific kind of groundedness that prevents a person from being destroyed by elevation. Because when large provision arrives and the visibility increases and the doors open wide, what keeps the chosen one from losing their center is not confidence, it is humility and generosity. The generosity that has been tested in scarcity and stayed open. This is the rarest quality of all. Because it is easy to plan to be generous when you have much. It is something entirely different to hold a generous spirit when you barely have enough. And the person who has kept their hands open during the lean season, who gave when it cost them, who believed in the principle of the seed even when the harvest was invisible, that person has built something inside them that multiplies provision rather than simply accumulating it. These are not qualities you manufacture, they are qualities that get forged. And your season has been the forge. The third thing, and this is the one most people never discuss because it requires the most honest kind of trust, is protection from premature provision. Let me sit with that phrase for a moment. Protection from premature provision. There are people who receive large unexpected sums of money before the formation is complete. And the pattern that follows is consistent enough that it has stopped surprising anyone who studies it closely. They lose it, not always immediately, not always dramatically, but they lose it, or they use it to recreate the exact environment they came from, just with more zeros attached to it. They fill old holes with new money. They make decisions from old wounds. They carry the same scarcity patterns into expanded circumstances, and watch the expanded circumstances gradually contract back to the same shape. Not because they were bad people, not because the universe was punishing them, but because you cannot receive more than you are built to hold. And the formation was not finished. So the season that has felt like delay, the months or years where you have been faithfully waiting for something that should have arrived by now, has not only been building your capacity and forming your character, it has been protecting you from receiving what is coming before you were able to keep it, before you were fully built to hold it, to steward it, to use it in the way that it was intended to be used, not just for your own comfort, but as the infrastructure for something larger than your personal circumstances. The formation season is not the waiting room. It is the most important room in the building. Now, I want to tell you about a man whose story carries every single thing I have just described, not as metaphor, but as documented history. His name was Joseph, and I am not telling you his story because it is old or because it is from a religious text. I am telling you his story because of all the documented examples in human history of a sudden, unexpected, disproportionate financial and positional breakthrough arriving after a long and difficult wilderness season. His story is the most precisely observed and the most completely mapped. It shows every stage. It shows every formation element. And it shows exactly how unexpected provision operates, arriving through the most unexpected channel, at the most unexpected moment, in the most unexpected form. Joseph was the son of a wealthy man. He was gifted in a specific way. He could see things before they materialized. He had dreams that were vivid, precise, clearly significant. And in those early years, before the difficulty began, he probably assumed the way most of us do when we sense our calling early, that the path from anointing to assignment would be relatively direct. He was wrong. What happened next was not what anyone would have designed for him. He was betrayed by the people closest to him, not enemies, not strangers, but his own family. He was sold. He was taken from everything he had known and placed in circumstances so far beneath where his calling seemed to be pointing, that any reasonable observer looking at his life from the outside would have concluded, this story is over. He missed it. He was supposed to be something significant, and instead, here he is. But the story shows us something different. It shows us that every single thing that happened in the years between Joseph's anointing and Joseph's assignment was building something specific in him. The betrayal taught him not to anchor his security in the loyalty of other people, a quality that was essential for the position he would eventually hold. The season of service in a foreign house taught him excellence under circumstances. He did not choose the discipline of doing his best work when the conditions were not ideal and no one was watching. The prison taught him patience that was not performance, the kind that holds steady when there is nothing to do but hold. And then, after years, in the space of a single morning, Joseph went from a prison cell to the second most powerful position in the known world, not because he finally earned it through enough suffering, not because he finally said the right prayer on the right morning, but because a problem arose that required exactly the gift that had been sharpened in exactly the way that exactly those years had sharpened it. And here is the part I need you to hear. The provision did not come through the door Joseph was watching. He was not watching Pharaoh. He was not positioned near the palace. He was not in a situation where anyone would have predicted that his next move was from prison to palace. The channel was entirely unexpected. The person through whom the provision arrived was the last person on any list Joseph could have written. And that is not a footnote in the story. That is the entire point. When Joseph was in the pit, he could not see the palace. When Joseph was in the prison, he could not see the Pharaoh. The provision was real. It had always been real. It had been ordained, and it had been moving toward him through a supply line that operated completely outside his field of vision. But he could not see it from where he was standing because it was approaching from a direction he had no category for. That is what unexpected means, and that is where you are right now. The provision is real. It is moving. It is on its way through a channel you are not currently monitoring, toward a moment you cannot currently see, in a form you do not currently have a category for. You are not behind in the story. You are exactly where Joseph was on the morning before the morning. And I have to ask you something. I want you to actually sit with this, not let it wash past you and keep moving. When was the last time you genuinely believed that what you have been carrying through this season, not just surviving, but actually carrying with faithfulness and intention, is preparation, not punishment? When was the last time you looked at your own story and said, what has been built in me through these years is not evidence of failure, it is evidence of formation, and the person I am becoming through this process is the specific person that what is coming requires. I am asking because how you answer that question determines how you receive what comes next. Because here is what I see consistently across every story I have studied of unexpected financial breakthrough. The person who receives it has almost always reached a specific internal shift before it arrived. They had stopped performing for the provision. They had stopped trying to manufacture the outcome. They had reached the place where they were doing what they were called to do, not because it was producing visible results, not because the evidence supported continuing, but because it was who they were. That posture, that authentic, unperformed faithfulness, is the posture of a person who is about to receive. Now I want to move from the interior to the exterior, from what is being built inside to what is already showing up outside. Because there are signs present in your life right now, signs that are easy to miss because they do not look like what you have been expecting breakthrough to look like, and these signs are telling you exactly where you are in this pattern. The first sign is a shift in your relationships that you did not plan or initiate. People who felt essential to your story have quietly moved to the margins, and people you would not have predicted have been moving closer. This is not rejection, and it is not loss, even when it feels that way. When the season of large provision approaches, the relational environment begins to reorganize around the person you are becoming, not the person you used to be. What is leaving is what was attached to your old chapter. What is arriving is what has the capacity to stand in the new one. If you have felt a shift in your closest relationships in the last 1 to 2 years, people moving away, new people unexpectedly appearing, connections forming in places you did not expect, that is not random. That is preparation. The second sign is an internal restlessness that has been growing, a sense that where you are is no longer a perfect fit for who you are becoming, not ingratitude, not dissatisfaction for its own sake, but a kind of pressure from the inside, like the seed pushing against the shell, not because something is broken, but because it has grown larger than the container that was holding it. If you have felt recently that you are outgrowing something, your environment, your circumstances, the way certain conversations feel, the life that felt normal before that, is a growth signal. The pressure is not a problem. The pressure is the growing. The third sign is an increase in what feels like spiritual sensitivity, thoughts that turn out to be accurate before you had any natural reason to think them, conversations that arrive at precisely the moment they were needed, patterns you notice that others around you do not seem to see, a sense that the invisible world is more present and more active than usual. This heightened perception is your receiving equipment beginning to open ahead of what is coming. It is the signal arriving before the event. The fourth sign is a quiet knowing that is different from ordinary hope. Hope says, I wish this would happen. Knowing says something quieter than that. It says, this is coming without fanfare, without the need to announce itself, just a steady, private, almost stubborn certainty that holds even when the circumstances keep saying otherwise. If you have been carrying that kind of knowing, the kind you have had to protect from your own doubts and from people around you who do not understand why you have not given up, that is not delusion. That is the signal ahead of the season. The fifth sign is an increase in resistance right before breakthrough. This is the one most people misread. because it looks like the opposite of what it is. Every person I have ever studied who received a large and unexpected financial shift reports the same thing. In the weeks and months directly before the shift arrived, the pressure was at its highest. The resistance was strongest. The evidence looked worst. The gap seemed to be widening rather than closing. Because the nature of breakthrough is that it comes through the hardest wall, not around it. And the hardest wall is always at the threshold. If things have felt heavier recently, if the pressure has seemed to increase rather than ease, I need you to hear this clearly. That is not the provision moving away from you. That is the sound of a threshold. Now, I want to say something that might surprise you. Everything I have shared with you so far, the formation theology, the Joseph parallel, the 3 lies about the waiting season, the 5 signs of an approaching shift, this alone, truly received and truly understood, would be enough to change the way you move through the next chapter of your life. This alone would be worth every minute you have stayed with me, but it is only the beginning of what I want to show you. Because underneath all of this, underneath the signs and the preparation and the formation, there is something I have not yet addressed, something that operates at a different level entirely, something that, if left unexamined, creates a ceiling that provision cannot break through even when everything else is aligned. It is not a spiritual problem, and it is not a character problem. It is the frequency at which your mind is operating. And before you decide what to do with that sentence, I want to tell you something that stopped me when I first encountered it. Something from a body of research that began at institutions like Princeton and MIT. Research on what happens in the human brain when a person is in optimal alignment, when they are most able to perceive opportunity, recognize patterns, experience the kind of synchronicities we have been talking about, and act with the kind of precise intuition that leads to disproportionate results. The scientists studying this discovered something they were not expecting. The specific brainwave frequency associated with all of those capacities, with genius-level pattern recognition, with intuitive accuracy, with the ability to perceive what others cannot perceive, and act on it before others can see. It is not the frequency most adults are operating in. They call it gamma. And I am going to come back to that research in the next part of this message, because what it reveals about why chosen ones specifically are affected, and what it means for exactly the kind of breakthrough we have been talking about, is something I want to give the full conversation it deserves. But I want to plant this seed right now. What if part of what has been limiting the channel of unexpected provision is not that the provision is being withheld, but that the neural frequency required to perceive it, to recognize it in unexpected form, to move with it when it arrives, has been suppressed? Hold that question, because the answer is going to reframe everything. What has been spoken in this first part of our time together is this: you are in a formation season, not a waiting room, not a punishment season, not a place where you have been overlooked or left behind. You are being built. The capacity is being built. The character is being forged. And what felt like delay has in fact been protection, the specific protection that comes from a wisdom that understood you were not yet ready to receive what is coming and hold it in the way it was meant to be held. The signs are already showing up. The relationships are reorganizing. The restlessness is a growth signal. The knowing is not wishful thinking, it is perception. And the pressure you have been feeling recently is not evidence of a dead end. It is the sound of a threshold. Joseph could not see the palace from the pit, but the palace was real. And chosen one, what is moving toward your life right now, the large, unexpected, season-changing provision approaching from a direction you have not been watching, is just as real as anything you are looking at today. In the next part of this message, I am going to take you underneath the surface. We are going to look at the 2 specific internal forces that most people never identify, the ones that quietly limit the channel of provision even in a prepared heart. We are going to begin the conversation about frequency and what science shows us about the mind of a chosen one. And we are going to start to name exactly what is required, not just spiritually, but structurally, for a person to be ready to receive what is coming. Stay with me. Chosen One, welcome back. In the first part of this message, we established something that I believe you needed to see clearly before we could go any further. We looked at the formation season for what it actually is, not a waiting room, not punishment, but the specific construction process that precedes large and unexpected provision. We walked through the story of Joseph and saw the pattern in its clearest form. We named the 5 signs already showing up in your life. And at the very end, I planted a seed about something. I want to come back to a body of research on the frequency at which the prepared mind operates and why it matters for exactly what we are talking about. I am going to come back to that. And when I do, what it reveals about you specifically, about why chosen ones are uniquely positioned and uniquely challenged in this area, is going to be one of the most practically significant things in this entire message. But before we get there, I need to take you somewhere that requires honesty. Because in the first part, I showed you what is happening around you, the formation, the signs, the orchestration that is already in motion. But there is something that needs to be examined on the inside. The internal obstacle I am about to name has a root most people have never seen clearly, and seeing it changes everything. There is a reason the provision has not arrived in the form you expected, and I told you in the first part that the reason is not what you think. Here is what I mean. Most people, when they examine why financial breakthrough has not yet arrived, go looking in the same direction. They examine their belief, they examine their prayer life, they examine their actions, their strategies, their positioning. They ask, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to do differently? And those are not useless questions, but they are surface-level questions. Because the most common ceiling in the life of a person who has prepared, who has believed, who has been in formation, the most common invisible ceiling that stops provision just short of arrival, is not found in what they are doing or not doing. It is found in what they are holding. Specifically, there are 2 things that most prepared people are holding without realizing it. 2 patterns that operate below the level of conscious belief and intentional action. 2 internal forces that create friction in the exact channel through which unexpected provision is designed to move. And the first one is this: the pattern of control. Now, when I say control, I do not mean control in the obvious sense, the aggressive kind that everyone recognizes in themselves or in others. I mean the quiet kind. The kind that comes from a deeply human and deeply understandable need to manage how something arrives. Here is how it works. A person believes that provision is coming. They are genuinely faithful in that belief. They are genuinely doing the inner work. But somewhere underneath the believing, without even being conscious of it, they have built a very specific picture of what the provision is going to look like when it comes, which channel it will arrive through, who will be involved, what the circumstances will look like, what they will need to do to receive it. And what that picture does without any malicious intent, without any conscious awareness, is narrow the channel. Think about how a river flows. When the river is wide and open, it carries enormous volume. But when you squeeze a river through a narrow channel, the pressure increases and the flow slows. The water does not stop, but it is constrained. That is what the control pattern does to provision. It takes what is designed to flow through every available channel, through every unexpected conversation, through every unlikely source, through every door that is not on the watching list, and it quietly narrows the opening to the one door you have designated as the right one, the one that makes logical sense, the one that aligns with your understanding of how things should work. And unexpected provision cannot enter through a door that narrow. There is a principle that appears in every major wisdom tradition that has ever studied divine supply, and it is stated with remarkable consistency across very different contexts and very different vocabularies. The principle is this: The supply moves through pathways that exceed human calculation. In Scripture, it is stated as, "My ways are not your ways." In the traditions that speak about universal flow, it is described as the idea that the intelligence behind provision is more vast and more creative than the human mind planning its own rescue. In the documented lives of people who have received large and unexpected financial shifts, it shows up as a consistent report. It did not come through the door I was watching. It came from somewhere I never would have predicted. The control pattern is not a character flaw. It is a protection mechanism. When you have been hurt by delayed expectations enough times, your mind begins to pre-construct the solution so that it feels less vulnerable. If you can name what is coming and how it is coming, then, when it does not arrive that way, the disappointment is at least the disappointment you were expecting, which is, in a strange way, safer than the disappointment of an open and unnamed hope. But the safety that the control pattern provides comes at a cost. The cost is flexibility, and the unexpected requires absolute flexibility. Let me ask you something. Right now, in your mind, do you have a picture of how the financial shift is going to arrive? A specific job, a specific person, a specific opportunity, a specific channel that you have been positioning yourself near? If the answer is yes, and for most people in your position, the answer is yes, I want you to do something in your mind right now. Do not change the belief that provision is coming. Keep that fully intact. But in your imagination, take the picture of how it is coming, that specific door, that specific channel, that specific scenario, and gently set it down. Not throw it away, not abandon it. Just set it on the floor beside you and release the grip on it. Because what is coming may very well include that door, but it will also include doors you cannot currently see. And the moment you release the need to control which door it comes through, you have just widened the channel by more than you know. Now, I want to go to the second pattern, and this one is quieter, more deeply buried, more protected by layers of spiritual language and positive confession and composed public presence. Because no one talks about this one out loud, almost no one admits it even to themselves. But it is the pattern I see underneath the surface of the vast majority of people who have been in a long financial wilderness and who, despite everything, have not yet received what is coming. It is the unworthiness ceiling. Let me describe it precisely, because I want you to recognize it when you see it. The unworthiness ceiling is not the same as low self-esteem. Most people with an unworthiness ceiling are functioning, capable, contributing people. They do not walk around thinking they are failures. They believe, genuinely and consciously, that God is good and that provision is possible and that they are called to a meaningful life. But somewhere beneath the conscious belief in a layer that was formed much earlier, often long before they had the vocabulary to examine it, there is a quiet, stubborn, deeply embedded conviction that large provision belongs to someone else, not to them specifically. It belongs to other people, people who have the right background, the right connections, the right starting point, the right combination of gifts and circumstances and timing. People who have not made the particular mistakes that this person has made. People who were not raised in the particular environment that this person was raised in. People who did not start as far back as this person started. The unworthiness ceiling does not announce itself. It does not show up as, "I do not deserve this." That would be too easy to address. It shows up instead as a series of very reasonable sounding thoughts. I should be grateful for what I have, which is true, but the ceiling uses it to stop the asking. I do not want to be materialistic, which is a valid value, but the ceiling uses it to block the receiving. Maybe this is not the right season, which may also be true, but the ceiling uses it to postpone indefinitely. Other people need this more than I do, which might be compassionate, but the ceiling uses it to redirect provision away from you before it even arrives. And here is where it becomes most destructive. The unworthiness ceiling does not just limit what you receive, it limits what you can hold. When provision does arrive in small forms, in partial forms, in the incremental ways it has probably been trying to arrive for years, the unworthiness ceiling activates a set of behaviors that most people recognize in themselves but cannot explain. They minimize it. It is not that much. They dismiss it. It could go away. They spend it quickly, before it can be taken back. They make decisions that seem logical in the moment, but that consistently redirect resources away from building wealth and toward filling old wounds. They unconsciously recreate the familiar level of scarcity because the familiar, even when uncomfortable, feels safer than the unfamiliar. This is not failure. This is not proof that you are not capable of receiving. This is a pattern that formed in response to specific experiences at a specific time in your life, and it has been doing its best to keep you safe ever since. But the season has changed, and what kept you safe in one season is creating a ceiling in the next. The work is not to shame the pattern. The work is to see it clearly, name it honestly, and make a deliberate decision to stop building the ceiling every time provision tries to come in. Now, I want to introduce something, because up until this point, everything we have talked about has been in the domain of belief, character, and formation, and those things are essential. They are the foundation. But there is a dimension of this conversation that requires us to go somewhere that most spiritual teachings on provision do not go. We need to talk about the brain. Specifically, we need to talk about what is happening neurologically in a person who has been in a long and pressured financial wilderness, and what science has discovered about the specific frequency state that the mind needs to be in to perceive and receive unexpected provision. Because here is what the research shows. The human brain operates in multiple frequency states. You have probably heard of the most basic ones, the slower states associated with sleep and relaxation, the faster states associated with alertness and focus. But there is a specific frequency range that sits above ordinary focused thought, a frequency that most people only enter briefly and unpredictably, a frequency that the researchers who have studied it consistently describe as the state in which the brain is operating at its highest capacity. That frequency is called gamma, and gamma is not an abstract concept in a lab. It is the brainwave state associated with peak intuition, with the kind of pattern recognition that allows a person to see the connection between things that do not appear to be connected. With synchronicities, the meaningful coincidences that spiritual people recognize as divine communication and that neuroscientists describe as the brain perceiving correlations below the threshold of conscious awareness. It is also, according to the research, the frequency state most closely associated with what scientists call flow, the state in which a person operates with an ease, a precision, and a creative power that vastly exceeds what they are able to do in ordinary states of mind. Think about what that means for this conversation. If unexpected provision arrives through channels you were not watching, through synchronicities and unlikely connections and doors you did not know were open, then the ability to perceive and recognize those channels when they appear requires a mind that is operating at a specific frequency. A mind that is running slow, foggy, anxious, reactive, a mind that is carrying the accumulated weight of a long financial winter is not able to perceive those channels clearly. Not because the channels are not there, but because the receiving equipment has been tuned to a frequency that cannot hear what is being transmitted. Now here is where it gets very specific to you. The gamma frequency, this peak state of neural function, was not designed to be rare. It was not designed to be something you access only in moments of meditation or extraordinary inspiration. Scientists who have studied the brains of young children find something remarkable. In children under the age of 7, gamma activity is sustained and consistent. The learning rate, the creative output, the intuitive accuracy, the ability to make connections across seemingly unrelated domains. All of it reflects what the brain looks like when it is regularly operating in its full frequency range. Then something happens. Around age 7, as children enter formal education systems and begin adapting to the demands of structured performance environments, that gamma activity begins to decline. The brain, under the pressure of standardized performance, begins to default to lower, more survival-oriented frequencies. And by adulthood, for most people, the sustained gamma that was natural in childhood has become rare and difficult to access. The scientists who study this call it the decline effect, and its consequences, when they map them against the capacities that high gamma produces, match almost exactly the list of things that a person in a financial wilderness reports losing over time. The sharp intuition that used to guide important decisions, the creative flow that used to make problem-solving feel effortless, the ability to perceive opportunities in unexpected forms, the sense of being connected to something larger than your own calculation. You did not lose those capacities because you failed or fell or stopped trying. You lost them because the decline effect hit your receiving equipment and nobody told you. And now, I want to tell you something that I think is one of the most important things in this entire message. The chosen one is not exempt from the decline effect. In fact, the chosen one is more significantly impacted by it. And here is why. The research suggests that people who are born with a naturally elevated gamma frequency, people whose intuition, perception, creative capacity, and spiritual sensitivity are unusually strong. In early childhood experience, a proportionally larger drop when the decline effect takes hold, because they had more to lose. The child who was always the one who knew things before they were told, who could sense the emotional temperature of a room before anyone spoke, who made connections that other children did not make, who seemed to operate with a kind of internal guidance system that could not be explained by their education or their environment. If that describes you, even partially, as a child, then what you have been experiencing in this adult season as fogginess, as difficulty with financial clarity, as the sense that your intuition is less reliable than it used to be, is not decline, it is suppression. The gamma that was always there, always high, has been sitting underneath years of accumulated pressure, of prolonged financial stress, of the wear that a long wilderness does to the neural circuitry that was meant to be your greatest asset. And that suppression has a direct impact on your ability to recognize and receive unexpected provision. Because unexpected provision requires a mind that can see sideways, that can perceive the connection others do not see, that can hear the signal in what looks like noise, that can act with precision in the moment when a channel opens unexpectedly without hesitation, without the fog that slows a mind that is running below its native frequency. And right now, in this same season, in this same pattern, in this same place, on the journey between formation and breakthrough, there are chosen ones all over the world who are navigating exactly what you are navigating. Let me say that again, because I want it to land. You are not alone in this. Right now, there are people in every corner of every country who have been faithfully holding on in a long and difficult financial wilderness, who have been doing the work, maintaining the character, staying in formation, who carry the same quiet knowing you carry, who feel the same pressure you feel at the same threshold you are standing at. You are not behind while everyone else moves forward. You are in the company of every chosen one who has ever stood at this exact place in the pattern, the place that looks, from the outside, like delay. But that is, from the inside of the story, the moment directly before the morning everything changes. And this community of people, these chosen ones, who are in formation together, they are about to experience something together. Not because they all found the same message, but because they are all at the same stage. And the stage you are at is the stage that precedes the shift. So where does this leave us? We have named the two internal forces that create a ceiling on incoming provision, the control pattern, which narrows the channel, and the unworthiness ceiling, which limits what can be held. We have introduced the gamma frequency and what the science shows about why a chosen one's receiving equipment can become suppressed over a long and pressured season. And now I want to give you something practical, because knowledge without application is just interesting information. I want to give you a way to begin identifying right now, in this moment, without needing to stand up or go anywhere where the energy leaks are in your financial receiving. Not financial management. I am talking about something different. I am talking about the places in your internal landscape where the scarcity pattern is actively draining the frequency that incoming provision moves through. Here is what I want you to do. Without turning anything off or changing your position, I want you to bring to mind 3 things. The first, the last time you received unexpected money or unexpected financial good news, even something small. A refund you had forgotten about. A bill that came in lower than expected. A gift you did not anticipate. Notice what happened in your body when it arrived. Was there relief? Yes. But was there also a quick thought underneath the relief, something along the lines of, this will not last, or this is not enough, or I need to be careful with this? Was the receiving complete, or was there something that moved quickly to manage, to protect, to prepare for it to go away? That quick movement, that tightening around the receiving, that is where the leak is. The second, bring to mind the largest financial need you currently carry. The most pressing gap. Now notice, is there a thought attached to that need that says something like, this is probably going to stay this way for a while? Not a fear, not a conscious belief, just a quiet background assumption that has settled in like furniture. That assumption is the ceiling, not the lack of provision. The assumption that the current level is the permanent level. The third, bring to mind one person in your life who you know has received unexpected financial provision. Someone whose story you have witnessed, and notice honestly what your first internal response to their story is. Is it pure joy? Or is there something underneath it that sounds like, I am glad for them, but I wonder why that happens for them and not for me? That small thought, that quiet comparison, that subtle sense of being on the outside of something is the fingerprint of the unworthiness ceiling. I am not asking you to shame yourself for any of those responses. Every single one of them makes complete sense given what you have been through. I am asking you to see them, because what you can see clearly, you can name. And what you can name, you can release. In the next part of this message, I am going to take you further into the gamma research. I am going to show you, through a story that stopped me when I first encountered it, what happens when the suppression is removed and the gamma frequency is restored. And I am going to introduce you to something specific, something from the intersection of neuroscience and spiritual practice that I believe is one of the most practically relevant tools for a chosen one who is preparing to receive in this season. I am also going to tell you about a woman whose story illustrates every single thing we have been talking about: the control pattern, the unworthiness ceiling, the wilderness season, the unexpected channel, and whose breakthrough arrived in a form she never would have predicted, through a door she had not been watching. And along the way, I am going to give you the practical tools that take everything from this conversation off the page and into your actual daily life as you move through this season. Stay with me. What is coming in the next part of this message is where the practical meets the profound, and it is exactly what you need for where you are standing right now. Chosen one, let me pick up exactly where we left off. In the last part, we named 2 things that most spiritual teachings on provision never address directly. We named the control pattern, the quiet narrowing of the channel that happens when you have decided, below the level of conscious awareness, which door the provision is supposed to come through. And we named the unworthiness ceiling, that deeply buried, carefully protected belief that large abundance belongs to someone else, and that your particular combination of history and mistakes and starting point quietly puts you outside the reach of what is coming to others. And then I introduced something new, something from the neuroscience side of this conversation. I introduced the idea of gamma, the specific brainwave frequency associated with peak intuition, with synchronicity, perception, with the kind of pattern recognition that allows a person to see what others cannot see and move before others can see it. And I told you that this frequency, which was natural, consistent, and high in you as a child, has been suppressed over years of accumulated pressure and prolonged financial strain, that the decline effect did not exempt you, and that, in fact, because you were born with a naturally elevated gamma, you experienced a proportionally larger drop than most. I want to go deeper into that now, because what the research actually shows, when you follow it past the headline and into what it means in daily practical life, changes the way you understand what has been happening to you. Think about what gamma actually looks like when it is operating fully, not in a lab, not in an abstract scientific description, in a person's real, daily life. It looks like the moment when you wake up in the middle of the night with an answer to a problem you had been unable to solve during the day. Not a partial answer. The whole thing, clear and complete, arriving while your logical mind was offline. That is gamma breaking through. It looks like the instinct that told you, before you had any rational basis for it, that a certain person was not who they were presenting themselves to be, or that a certain opportunity was exactly right, even though nothing on paper would have told you that yet. That is gamma. It looks like the experience of walking into a conversation that you had no logical reason to be in, with a person you had no logical reason to meet, and leaving with the exact piece of information you had been trying to find for months. What most spiritual people call a divine appointment. What the neuroscientists, when they study the brain activity around those events, trace back to the same frequency range. Gamma is the nervous system's equivalent of a very clear signal on a very clear channel. And when it is fully active, you do not just think better, you perceive better. You notice things that a slower, more survival-oriented mind simply does not have the bandwidth to register. Now, here is what financial wilderness does to that signal. Prolonged financial stress does not just affect your mood or your energy levels. It changes your brain chemistry in measurable, documented ways. When the nervous system is under sustained pressure, not the short-term pressure of a deadline, but the prolonged, grinding, low-level pressure of a financial season that has lasted months or years, the brain begins to prioritize survival frequencies over perception frequencies. The threat detection systems become louder, the resting state drops lower, and the higher frequency capacities, the intuition, the pattern recognition, the perceptual range that gamma enables, they get quieter. Not because something is wrong with you, because your brain is doing exactly what brains are designed to do under prolonged stress. It is reallocating resources to survival. But the cost of that reallocation is the very capacity you most need to navigate your way out. A mind that is running in survival mode cannot see the unexpected channel clearly. It cannot hear the quiet synchronicity in the noise. It cannot recognize the unusual connection that leads to the disproportionate outcome. It is too busy scanning for threats to be open to the full range of what is arriving, and this is why so many people who are spiritually prepared, character-formed, and genuinely ready in every inner sense still feel like something is blocking the receive. It is not a spiritual block. It is a frequency block. The antenna is there. The signal is being transmitted. But the receiving equipment has been running in a mode that cannot tune to the frequency the signal is on. Now, I want to tell you about someone. Her name was Ruth. And before I tell her story, I want to be clear about why I am telling it. I am not telling it because it is ancient, or because it is from a sacred text, or because it sounds inspiring when you quote it at the right moment. I am telling it because of every documented story of large and unexpected financial provision arriving through a completely unexpected channel, hers is one of the most precisely observed, and the specific elements of her situation map almost exactly onto what we have been describing. Ruth had lost everything, not in the dramatic, sudden way, in the slow, grinding way. Her husband died. Then her father-in-law died. The entire financial structure around which her life had been built collapsed, and what was left was nothing, no income, no land, no path forward that anyone around her could see. The people around her did the reasonable thing. They went back to what was familiar. They went back to the people and the places that felt safe, that made logical sense, that represented the most predictable path to stability. And that path, the logical, sensible, expected path, was the one everyone would have recommended. Ruth did not take it. She stayed in a place she did not belong to, with a family she was not born into, speaking a language she had not grown up speaking, working fields she had no claim to, through a system that was not designed with her in mind. And then something happened, not gradually, not through a carefully designed plan that she had mapped out and executed. Something happened through a conversation she was not supposed to be in, with a man she had no strategic reason to be near. On a day that was no different from every other day, she had shown up and done the humble, ordinary work of someone who was surviving. Boaz noticed her, not because she had positioned herself strategically, not because she had performed for visibility, but because the quality of what had been built in her during the wilderness, during the loss, during the years of staying faithful in hard soil, had produced something in her that could not be manufactured, something that a person of discernment could see from a distance. And what came after that single, unexpected, unplanned conversation was not just security for her, it was a full reversal. Everything that had been stripped away, provision, position, belonging, future, came back in a form she could not have designed if she had tried, through a door she had not been watching, from a source she had not been expecting. Now I want to map Ruth's story onto yours, because I think the parallels are more precise than they might initially appear. Ruth was in a foreign field, meaning she was operating outside the environment where she would naturally be recognized, outside the circle where her gifts would automatically be acknowledged, outside the system that would have rewarded her effort in the normal way. Does any part of that feel familiar? The person who is in a financial wilderness is almost always operating, in some way, outside the fields where their effort is immediately rewarded. They are doing the work, but the return is not proportionate. They are showing up, but the recognition is not visible. They are in what feels like a foreign field, a season that does not match their gifts, their calling, or the investment they have made. Ruth did not quit the foreign field because it was foreign. She stayed and she worked. And the second thing I want you to notice about Ruth's preparation is this: when the breakthrough arrived, she did not create it. She did not manufacture the opportunity. She did not force open the door or position herself strategically near the right person. She was simply present, available, doing the work of the season she was actually in, not the season she wished she were in, not the season she was preparing for, but the season that was in her hands right now. And the unexpected source found her there. This is the posture of a person who is about to receive unexpected provision, not anxious, not frantically searching, not locked onto one door, present in the field, open to the whole landscape. And here is what I want you to take from Ruth's story that is specifically relevant to the Gamma conversation. Boaz noticed something in Ruth that the other women in that field did not have. He described it in terms of loyalty and faithfulness, but what he was actually describing, if you read it closely, is a quality of presence, a quality of full engagement with the current moment, the current task, the current field. That quality of presence, of being genuinely here rather than mentally living in the season you are waiting for, is one of the clearest expressions of what a Gamma active mind looks like in daily life. The suppressed Gamma mind is always somewhere else. It is running through the worry loops about the future, or re-examining the failures of the past, or waiting at the door it has designated as the right one while the provision is arriving through the window. The restored Gamma mind is here. Sharp, present, perceptive, able to notice what is actually happening rather than what it expected to be happening. And this is why the work of restoring that frequency matters so practically. not as a spiritual luxury, as a strategic necessity for a person who is expecting provision to arrive in unexpected form, because the unexpected requires a mind that is paying attention to the whole field, not just one door. I want to give you something to do with all of this, not tomorrow, not after this message, right now, while you are still with me. Earlier I gave you 3 mental observations, 3 ways to begin identifying where the scarcity pattern is draining your receiving frequency. Now, I want to give you the other side of that exercise, the release side. In your mind, I want you to bring up the image of a door. Specifically, the door you have been watching for the provision to come through. The one that represents the most logical, expected channel. The job, the deal, the person, the opportunity. Whatever it is, bring it clearly into your mind. Look at it, acknowledge it. That door may be real. That door may still open. I am not asking you to stop believing it could. But now, in your mind, I want you to take a single step backward from it, not turning away, not closing it. Just one step back, so that your field of vision is no longer entirely filled by that one door. From where you are standing now, notice what else is in the hallway. There are other doors, there are windows, there are corridors you have not walked down yet. You do not need to identify them. You do not need to plan your route to them. Just notice that they exist. And in noticing that they exist, you have just done something practical. You have widened the channel. You have told your nervous system, I am open to receiving from any direction my source chooses to send it from. If that landed for you, if something shifted in your chest when you did that exercise, I want you to type one word in the comments right now, just the word, open. Not because it does anything magical, but because the act of declaring it in a space where others can witness it is one of the ways the mind locks in a new posture. Now I want to come to something that I promised at the end of the last part of this message. I mentioned research. I mentioned that there is a body of scientific work that specifically addresses the gamma frequency, not as a concept, but as something measurable, something that can be worked with practically, something that has been documented in its effects on exactly the kind of perceptual and intuitive capacity we have been talking about. And I told you that I was going to come back to that. I want to do that now, because I think this is one of the most practically significant parts of everything I have been sharing. I came across research from Princeton, from researchers who were specifically studying the brainwave states present during what ordinary people described as their most unusual, most synchronistic, most unexplainable positive experiences. They were trying to find out whether there was a measurable neural correlate to the experience of everything coming together, of the right person showing up at the right moment, of doors opening in ways that exceeded logical probability. And what they consistently found is that the brains of people in those states, measured in real time as the synchronicities were happening, were operating in an elevated gamma range. Not just a little elevated, significantly. And the finding that I want you to hold, because it changes the conversation entirely, is this. Gamma is not a rare state. It is not reserved for spiritual masters or gifted meditators. It is not something that only a few people have access to. It is a native frequency of the human brain specifically. It is the frequency that was dominant in you as a young child. Before the system began its slow suppression, the question is not whether you can access it. The question is what has been keeping it suppressed. And I am going to come back to this in the next video, because there is something specific, something that sits at the intersection of this research and the practical daily life of a person who is in exactly the season you are in, that I want to share in full detail. Something that I believe is one of the most relevant tools for a chosen one who is actively preparing to receive. I want to give it the full space it deserves, so stay with me in part 2 for that. But before we leave this part of the conversation, I want to make sure you are carrying something specific forward. Everything we have covered in this second revelation, taken together, tells you one thing. The reason the provision has not arrived in the form you expected is not that it is absent. It is not that you failed to believe correctly. It is not that you are outside the reach of what is moving toward you. The reason is that unexpected provision requires a specific interior landscape to arrive into. It requires a channel that has been widened, not narrowed by the control pattern. It requires a receiver that has been opened, not capped by the unworthiness ceiling. And it requires a mind that is operating at the full frequency of its native capacity, not suppressed by the accumulated weight of a long financial winter. You have named the control pattern. You have seen the unworthiness ceiling. You have begun to understand what the gamma suppression has cost you in terms of perceptual range. And now, right here, at this specific place in the message, something can begin to shift. Not at some future point when everything is perfect, not when the provision has arrived and you have proof. Now, in this awareness, in this naming, because what you can see clearly, you can release. And what you can release begins to widen. In the next part of this message, I am going to take you into something I think you have been waiting for. We have talked about what is happening to you, the formation, the suppression, the patterns. We have talked about what has been blocking the channel. Now I am going to tell you what unexpected provision actually requires of the person who receives it. Not the spiritual version, not the vague encouragement version. The specific, structural, character-based requirements that appear in every single documented story of large financial shift, without exception. The qualities that Joseph had by the time he stood before Pharaoh. The qualities that Ruth had by the time Boaz noticed her. The qualities that, when they are present in a person, create the exact interior landscape into which large and unexpected provision naturally flows. And when you hear them, I think you are going to recognize them in yourself, because the formation season you have been in has been building them one by one, often through things that felt like loss. Stay with me. What is coming next is the part that shifts your understanding of your own story. Chosen one, we are at a turning point in this message. Everything until now has been looking at what has been happening to you and in you. The formation, the suppression, the patterns that were quietly creating a ceiling on the channel. We have been going deep, and we have been going honest. And I hope that by now, something has begun to settle in you that was not settled before. But now, I want to turn the direction of our conversation. Because there is a question that I believe you have been carrying, maybe not in these exact words, but somewhere underneath everything else. And the question is this: what does it actually take to receive what is coming? Not belief, not declaring things out loud every morning, not performing a specific spiritual routine. What does it structurally require? What qualities need to be in place for a person to be the kind of vessel into which large and unexpected provision can flow and stay? Because here is what I have observed consistently across the lives of people who walk through large financial shifts. And this is not a spiritual observation, it is a practical one. There are character qualities, specific, nameable, observable qualities that appear in every single person who receives large and unexpected provision and does not lose it within 2 to 3 years. Not some of them, every one of them. And I want to walk through those qualities with you today. Not as a checklist you need to evaluate yourself against. Not as a list of things you need to go away and develop before you can qualify. But as a mirror. Because I believe, based on what you have walked through and what you have been in formation for, based on the specific shape of the wilderness you have been navigating, I believe these qualities have been building in you, one by one, through the hardest parts of exactly the season you have been in. The first quality is humility that has been tested by circumstance, not just chosen as a value. Let me explain the difference, because this is a distinction most people miss. There are two kinds of humility. There is the humility that a person chooses as a spiritual posture, the kind that says, I know intellectually that I am not the center of the story, and I hold myself accordingly. That is good. That is a choice, but it has not been tested. And then there is the humility that a person has walked into, that was pressed into them not by a decision but by a season. The humility that comes from having needed help and asking for it, from having been in over your head and acknowledging it, from having built something that fell, or held on to something that left, or planned carefully for something that did not go the way you planned. That kind of humility is different in texture. It is softer than chosen humility. It is less defended. It does not need to announce itself or protect itself. And it is the only kind of humility that can hold large provision without being inflated by it. Because what happens when money arrives in disproportionate amounts, when the shift is as sudden and as large as what we are talking about, is that it tests the container. It tests whether the person who receives it knows who they are independently of it, whether their identity is stable enough to remain the same person after the number changes. The person who has been formed by a long wilderness, who knows in their bones what it is to have needed and to have waited and to have been sustained through something they did not manage through their own strength, that person does not lose their center when the abundance arrives, because they know the center is not made of money. Has the season you have been in pressed that kind of humility into you? I think it has. The second quality is a generosity posture that was maintained through scarcity. This is the rarest quality, and it is also the most powerful one in terms of what it does to the channel of provision. There is a principle that cuts across every wisdom tradition I have ever studied. It is stated in different words in different contexts, but the substance is always the same. The seed that is held back does not produce a harvest. The hand that is closed cannot receive what is being poured into it. What flows through a person freely multiplies. What is hoarded contracts. Now, I want to be very careful here, because I am not talking about money management or financial planning, or the practical wisdom of saving and stewarding responsibly. Those things matter, and they are not what I am addressing. I am talking about the interior posture of generosity, the spirit of it. The willingness, even in seasons of scarcity, even when your own needs are pressing, even when the logical voice says that you cannot afford to give, to keep your hands even slightly open. And here is what I have observed about the people in financial wilderness seasons who maintain a generous spirit through the scarcity. They are the ones who receive the unexpected provision, and they are the ones who keep it and multiply it, because the channel that was practiced in giving is the same channel that is wide enough to receive. If you have been the kind of person who, even in this hard season, has still found ways to give, whether that is your time, your energy, your small resources, your attention, your presence, then you have been practicing something that is about to matter enormously. The channel is already open. The third quality is discernment, that was sharpened through having to make hard decisions without clear information. This one is deeply practical. When large provision arrives, it does not arrive in a vacuum. It arrives with options, with people, with opportunities that each look, on the surface, like they could be the right door to walk through. And one of the most common ways that people lose large provision is not through mismanagement in the obvious sense. It is through a failure of discernment, at the moment when discernment was most required. They cannot distinguish the genuine opportunity from the opportunist who arrived wearing its clothing. They cannot hear the quiet no underneath the attractive yes. They move quickly because the provision is finally here, and they do not want to lose it when the moment actually required them to slow down and see clearly. The season of financial wilderness, of making hard decisions with limited resources, of learning what is essential and what is noise, of being in situations where you had to choose carefully because the margin for error was small. That season builds discernment. The person who has been through the wilderness knows what things cost, not just in money, in time and energy and trust and peace of mind. They have had to develop a precision of judgment that a person who has never been constrained simply does not have. And that discernment is going to protect the provision when it arrives. The fourth quality is emotional regulation under sudden change. Most people do not think about this in the context of financial provision because they assume that good change, positive, wanted change would naturally be easy to regulate around. Why would you need to emotionally regulate around something you have been waiting for? But the reality is more complex than that. Sudden positive change is still a disruption to the nervous system. It brings its own version of instability, a kind of overwhelm that is not negative, but that is disorienting. A new set of decisions to make. A new set of people who suddenly want to be near you. A new sense of visibility and exposure. A new level of responsibility. And the person who has not developed emotional regulation through hard seasons, who has not learned how to stay grounded when the ground itself is shifting, can lose stability just as easily in sudden positive change as in negative change. But the person who has been navigating a long financial wilderness, who has learned how to maintain their center while the circumstances were pulling at it from every direction, that person has developed exactly the kind of regulation that allows them to receive large change without being destabilized by it. They know how to breathe through disruption. They know how to stay present in uncertainty. They know at a cellular level that their peace is not tied to their circumstances because they had to learn that lesson in the hard season, and it got pressed in deep. The fifth quality is identity stability, knowing who you are before and after the provision arrives. This is the one that integrates all the others, and it is the one that the formation season produces most directly, because the wilderness has a way of stripping everything that is not essential, the things you thought defined you that actually were never yours to begin with, the versions of yourself that were built for an audience, the identities that were constructed from external validation, from position, from what you could produce or provide. When all of that is stripped back, when you are in a season where your output is not proportionate to your calling, where your position is not reflective of your capacity, where the external evidence of your worth is temporarily misaligned with your actual worth, what remains? What is left when everything else is removed? That is your real identity. And the person who has found that, who has been in the wilderness long enough to meet themselves, stripped of all the performance and all the proving, that person cannot be destroyed by elevation, because they know themselves independent of what they have. Their identity was forged in the forge, not constructed from the gilding, and that is the person who can hold what is coming. Now let me tell you what is happening in the 5 areas of your life right now, in this season, that reflects these 5 qualities being activated for what is ahead. In the area of your relationships, there has been a reorganization that reflects a new level of discernment becoming operational. The relationships that could not hold the weight of your next season have shifted. The connections that carry the capacity for what is coming are beginning to draw closer. This is not about judging anyone. It is about the natural alignment of resonant frequencies. As your character has been refined, the landscape of your relational world has been quietly adjusting to match. In the area of your purpose, there has been a sharpening of clarity that is different from the confusion of earlier in the wilderness. Even if you cannot see all the details yet, even if the full picture is not in view, there is a growing precision in what you know you are called to, what you cannot do, what you will not accept, what you were born for. That precision is not arrogance, it is formation arriving at clarity. In the area of your provision, there is movement that your current visible circumstances may not yet reflect, channels that are preparing, doors that are almost open. The orchestration that I want to describe to you now, the 4 specific things that happen in the months directly before a large financial shift, has been operating in your life, and I believe when you hear them, you will recognize yourself in them. In the area of your health and energy, the toll of the wilderness is real, and I do not minimize it. But underneath the fatigue, Underneath the wear, there is a resilience that was not there before. Something that has been pressed into you that holds under pressure in a way that the earlier version of you could not hold. And in the area of your spiritual life, the quality of your connection to the source has deepened. Not because you have been more disciplined, but because the wilderness has a way of removing the spaces between you and what you depend on. The dependency that the comfortable season never required has become real, lived, cellular. And that depth of connection is one of the most important things a person can have in the season of large provision. Now let me describe the 4-part sacred strategy, the 4 things that are currently being orchestrated in your life, so you can see them clearly and cooperate with them rather than resist them. The first is a closing of wrong doors to redirect toward right channels. Have you experienced, in the last 1 to 3 years, a door closing that felt wrong, a loss, a disappointment, an opportunity that fell through, a plan that did not work out despite your effort? Something that made no logical sense, because from the outside it looked like you did everything right. I want you to reconsider what that closed door was. Not as rejection, not as evidence of unworthiness, not even as delay. A closed door that redirects is not a failed door. It is navigation. The provision that is coming is designed to arrive through a specific channel at a specific moment. And in order for you to be positioned correctly for that channel, in the right city, in the right conversation, in the right field, on the right morning, doors that would have taken you in another direction had to close. Not to punish you, to protect the trajectory. If something has closed for you that did not make sense, and if you have been carrying the weight of that loss, I want to offer you a new frame. What if the closing was the navigation? The second is a relational reorganization that is clearing the path. People who are not aligned with what is coming are quietly moving out of proximity. And people who carry the capacity to stand in the season that is ahead are being drawn closer, sometimes through circumstances you did not engineer, sometimes through conversations that seemed ordinary but that you keep thinking about, sometimes through connections that arrived from directions you were not expecting. This relational clearing is not always comfortable. Some of what has moved away is things you loved. Some of what has shifted is relationships you invested in deeply. But the field is being prepared. And the people who are meant to be present for what arrives, the Boaz who notices Ruth in the field, the unexpected connection who carries the key for the next door, those people are being positioned in your proximity right now. The third is an internal preparation that has been surfacing old wounds, specifically so they can be healed before the new season begins. This is the one that confuses most people, because they expect the approach of breakthrough to feel lighter, and instead, in the weeks and months before a large shift, old things often come to the surface. Old patterns, old hurts, old ways of seeing yourself that you thought were behind you. It does not mean you are going backward. It means the source is running final preparation, the kind of preparation that looks like excavation before it looks like construction. Because you cannot build the new season on unhealed ground. And the wounds that are surfacing right now are not evidence that you are not ready. They are evidence that you are almost ready. And something in the preparing knows that these things need to be addressed before the weight of the new season is placed on what they are sitting under. The fourth is a convergence of timing. Multiple streams that have been flowing separately are beginning to move toward the same point. You may have felt this as a kind of acceleration, as if things that were moving slowly are now moving faster. As if multiple areas of your life, your professional life, your spiritual life, your relational life, your inner life, are all pointing towards something at the same time, all adjusting simultaneously in a way they did not before. That convergence is not your imagination. Multiple streams of preparation, the character formation, the relational reorganization, the wound healing, the frequency work, They do not arrive separately. When they converge, when all the work of a long season comes into alignment at the same time, what follows is the kind of sudden, unexpected shift that looks to observers like it came from nowhere. But you know where it came from. It came from years of formation, working underground, invisible, patient, building root systems deep enough to hold what is above. Take a breath. Everything I have said until this point has been pointing here. This is the shift in the frame. Your waiting season was not a detour, not a parenthesis, not a gap between the real chapters of your story. It was the chapter, one of the most important chapters, the one where the vessel was being built for everything that comes next. Now, I want to tell you who you are in this story, not who you will become, not who you are hoping to be, who you are right now in this season already. You are the one who sees. Not everyone in that field in Ruth's story noticed what was happening around them. Not everyone has the capacity to perceive the pattern beneath the surface, but you do. You have always had it. It is one of the reasons you have stayed when others have quit, because something in you could see past the circumstances to a truth that the circumstances were not yet reflecting. That is the seer's identity, and it belongs to you. You are the one who ends the pattern. Whatever scarcity pattern was inherited, whatever way of relating to money and provision and abundance was modeled in the environment you came from, it was never meant to be your permanent inheritance. You are the one in whose generation the pattern turns. Not because you are more deserving than those who came before, but because you were placed in this position, in this generation, with this calling, for exactly this purpose. The provision that is coming to you is not just for you. It is the first harvest from a field that, for too long, was never allowed to produce. And when it comes, and when it multiplies, it is going to reach further than your personal circumstances. It is going to touch your family, your community, the people whose lives intersect with yours in ways you cannot currently map. You are the cycle breaker, and you are the builder. What is coming to you is not a windfall to be spent. It is foundation material. It is the resource that will outlast you, the structure that your stewardship of this provision will create for people who come after you and who will never know your name, but whose life will be different because of the decision you made with what was placed in your hands. So how do you live in this season right now, in the waiting that has not yet ended, in the formation that is still in progress, in a way that is aligned with who you are and what is coming? I want to give you something practical, because waiting well is not passive. It is one of the most active things you can do in a season like this. Waiting well has 3 movements. The first movement is staying present in the field you are actually in, not the field you are waiting to be in. The second movement is maintaining the character posture of the person who has already received it, the humility, the generosity, the discernment, not as performance, but as practice. And the third movement, this is the most practical one, and the one most people skip, is the daily practice of what I call expectant specificity. Every day, in whatever form of inner dialogue or quiet reflection is natural for you, I want you to begin speaking to the provision as if you are preparing a room for a guest you know is coming. Not frantically, not anxiously. The way a host prepares carefully, warmly, with confidence, with the posture of someone who received a confirmed reservation, not someone who placed a wish and is hoping. I am preparing for you. I am clearing space. I am becoming the person who is ready to receive you wisely and well. You are not begging for provision, you are preparing for it. That shift from supplicant to steward, from hoping to hosting, is one of the most powerful interior moves a person can make in the season directly before large provision arrives. And one more thing before I take you into the most important part of this message. Before this message is over, I am going to speak something over your life, a declaration, a prayer. a sealing of what has been spoken here today into the real and lived experience of who you are. I want you to stay for that, because I believe with everything I have that what you are about to hear in the closing of this message is the specific reason this video was placed in front of you today. Not the information, not even the understanding, as important as that is. The declaration at the end is the reason. Stay with me. What comes next is the peak of everything this message has been building toward, and I promise you, it is worth every minute you have given this. Chosen one, we are here. Everything that came before this moment, every revelation, every layer of truth we walked through together was preparing you for what I am about to say, not as inspiration, not as motivation, as the most important structural truth of this entire message. Here it is. You were not placed in this financial season by accident. You were positioned here by a wisdom that operates far beyond anything we can schedule or calculate specifically, so that when the unexpected provision arrives, the person receiving it would be the person this season was designed to build. The provision is not late. The provision is on time, because the vessel required for what is coming was not ready earlier, and now it is. Let me say that slowly so it can land where it needs to land. The length of your waiting season is not a measurement of how overlooked you are. It is a measurement of what is coming. Because the larger the provision and the more lasting its impact is meant to be, the more specific and the more complete the preparation required. Small provision can arrive in a slightly prepared vessel. It can still be managed, still be held, even if the foundation is not fully built. But what is described in the title of this message, large, unexpected, season-shifting provision that cannot arrive into an incomplete vessel without causing damage, without being lost, without being used in ways that recreate the old season in a new setting. And so the formation took as long as it took, not because you were behind, because what was being prepared required exactly this much time. You are not the exception to the pattern of unexpected provision. You are the embodiment of it. Now, I want to do something I have been building toward since the very first part of this message. I want to come back to the research I mentioned. The gamma conversation, the Princeton work on the brainwave state, associated with what scientists call peak perception and what the rest of us call synchronicity, intuition, divine appointment. Because when I put that together with everything we have just discussed, the formation, the 5 character qualities, the 4-part sacred strategy, the identity you carry, something emerges that I believe is the most practically significant thing in this entire conversation. In the earlier part of this message, I introduced the concept of gamma, the brainwave frequency associated with peak intuition, pattern recognition, and the ability to perceive and act on unexpected channels of provision. I told you that this frequency is not rare, that it was natural, consistent, and high in you as a child, and that the decline effect documented in research from institutions including Princeton and MIT progressively suppressed it as you moved through the structured pressure of adult life. I also told you something more specific than that. I told you that the chosen one is not exempt from the decline effect. That, in fact, the chosen one is more significantly impacted by it because the starting gamma frequency was higher. And when a naturally elevated frequency is suppressed, the gap between what was and what is becomes more pronounced, more felt, more disorienting. You know what that gap feels like. It feels like trying to think clearly through fog when you used to think clearly in open sky. It feels like reaching for an intuition that used to arrive immediately and finding that it is slower now, less certain, harder to trust. It feels like the spiritual perceptiveness that used to be your native equipment, the ability to sense what was coming, to read the room beneath the room, to know things before they were confirmed, has been muted. And the harder your financial season has been, the longer it has lasted, the more accumulated that suppression becomes. Because the brain, as I described before, responds to prolonged financial stress by reallocating resources to survival frequencies, and survival frequencies are brilliant at detecting threats. But they are not designed for perceiving unexpected opportunity. They are not designed for recognizing the unusual channel. They are not designed for the kind of relaxed, wide-range perception that allows you to notice when a Boaz has entered your field. Here is what I want you to understand with total clarity. The 5 character qualities we discussed in the last part of this message, the humility, the generosity, the discernment, the emotional regulation, the identity, stability, all of them are essential. All of them have been forming in you through this season. But there is a 6th element that integrates all of them, that makes them operational rather than theoretical. It is the clarity of mind to perceive and receive what is coming. Not the belief that it is coming, not even the character to hold it when it arrives. The actual moment-to-moment neural capacity to notice the unusual conversation, to recognize the unlikely source, to feel the significance of the door opening before you have fully processed what is behind it, and to move. That capacity requires gamma, and gamma that has been suppressed by years of financial pressure cannot operate at the level required simply by believing more or by deepening spiritual practice, although those things matter enormously. What it requires is something that goes directly to the level of the brain's operating frequency. I want to tell you about a man. He is 51 years old. He had worked in the same industry for 27 years, building expertise, building a reputation, building a career that was supposed to be secure. And then his company contracted, not because of his performance, because of restructuring. And suddenly, at 51, he found himself facing something he had not faced since his early 20s, starting again. He went back to the job market. He updated the resume. He prepared the way you prepare when you are a professional who knows how to present himself. He walked into interview rooms with everything he had built over 27 years on paper in front of him, and it was not working. He described it like this: I would walk into the room and everything I knew would just sit there, behind glass. I could see it. I could reach for it. But when I needed it most, when they asked the questions that mattered, my mind would go foggy. The words would not come. I knew the answers, but I could not access them. He tried different things. He tried different approaches. Nothing was shifting. And then, through a conversation he described as one he almost did not have, with a person he had no strategic reason to listen to, he was introduced to the research on gamma activation, on brain entrainment, on the science of restoring the frequency that prolonged pressure suppresses. He was skeptical. He was honest about that afterward. He had tried enough things to be skeptical, but he tried it. 11 days later, he received an offer, not for the kind of position he had been interviewing for a better one, more aligned with what he actually had to bring, with compensation that exceeded what he had been making before the restructuring. What changed? He was not more qualified on day 11 than he was on day 1. His resume did not change. His experience did not change. But here is what he said, and I want you to hear these words carefully. He said, I did not change anything outside. I changed here. And he pointed to his head. The fog lifted, and when it lifted, everything I already knew was available again. What lifted the fog was not meditation. He had tried that. Not journaling, not affirmations, not a different supplement routine. What lifted the fog was a 7-minute audio track that used a specific technology called brain entrainment to guide the brain back into the frequency range it was designed to operate in, to reactivate gamma, to restore the neural environment in which the full capacity of a prepared mind becomes accessible again. This technology was developed by a neuroscientist named Dr. Robert Lake, who has spent 34 years studying the intersection of brainwave frequency and human performance. Drawing on research from institutions including MIT, Harvard, Princeton, and Stanford, Dr. Lake distilled the mechanics of gamma activation into a format that does not require months of practice, does not require expensive lab equipment, and does not require any particular spiritual tradition. It requires 7 minutes, a pair of headphones, and a mind that is ready to stop running in survival mode. Now, I want to be honest with you about something, because I promised at the beginning of this message that I would not oversell anything, and I am not going to start now. This is a tool, not a guarantee. No audio file writes your story. No frequency technology replaces the formation you have been through, the character that has been forged, the specific preparation of your particular season. What it does, and what I believe it can do for you specifically, as someone who is carrying the full weight of a long wilderness season and who is standing at exactly the threshold we have been describing, is remove the static. The neural static that the decline effect and prolonged financial pressure have accumulated. The static that sits between your full perceptive capacity and what you can actually access in the moment when the unexpected channel appears. When the static is removed, you hear more clearly, you see more clearly, you move more precisely, you notice what you would otherwise miss. And for a person who is preparing to receive provision that is arriving through an unexpected channel, that clarity is not a luxury. It is a practical necessity. I know what some of you are thinking right now, because I would be thinking the same thing. You have tried things before. You have invested in tools and practices and resources that were supposed to change something, and the change was smaller than the promise. You have been disappointed enough times that your first response to anything new is a reasonable, earned skepticism. I hear that, and I want to speak directly to it. This is not the same mechanism as what you have tried before. Meditation works, but meditation requires months, sometimes years, of consistent practice to produce sustained changes in brainwave activity. Most people cannot maintain that consistency, not because they are undisciplined, but because life is full, and the results are not immediately perceptible. Brain entrainment is different. It does not ask you to produce the state through effort. It guides the brain there directly through the specific audio frequencies that cause the brain to follow along, to synchronize, to shift into the range that meditation is trying to reach through a much longer path. It is not more spiritual than meditation. It is not a replacement for spiritual practice. It is simply a more direct route to the same destination, a brain operating at its full native frequency. 7 minutes, every day, headphones on, eyes closed if possible, and let the technology do what it was designed to do. The research on this technology spans decades and multiple institutions. The results are not anecdotal. They are measurable, repeatable, and documented in peer-reviewed contexts. And the 18,366 people who have used the Genius song, the specific audio track Dr. Lake developed, have reported results that follow the same pattern. Not all dramatic, not all immediate, but consistent. The fog lifts, the clarity returns, the intuition that was suppressed comes back online, the synchronicities begin appearing with more frequency, more precision, more clarity than before. And for someone who is positioned the way you are positioned at the threshold of a large and unexpected financial shift, with the character built and the formation nearly complete, that restored perception is the final piece of the preparation. Now, about the practical side, I want to be transparent with you about what this looks like financially, because I think you deserve clarity on this. Traditionally, to access gamma frequency through professional channels, the options are limited and expensive. Biofeedback therapy, the clinical method of training brainwave activity in real time, costs around $300 per session, and meaningful results require multiple sessions. The home equipment that allows you to do this independently runs around $7,000. Most people do not have access to either of those options, and Dr. Lake knew that when he developed this technology. That was part of the motivation to make what has been available only to the wealthy accessible to everyone who needs it. The standard price of the Genius Song is $49. But for people who find this message because Dr. Lake believes that the person who is watching a message like this one is the specific person who is actually ready to use this. The price has been set at $39. Not available on Amazon, not on Spotify, not anywhere else. Only through the link I have placed in the description and the pinned comment of this video. For $39, you receive the 7-minute Genius Song track itself, the full brain entrainment technology. You also receive Genius Child, an audio track designed to support focus and confidence in children. You receive the original book that the film The Secret drew its inspiration from, a more grounded, more practical guide to financial alignment than most people realize exists, normally $20 on Amazon. Included here at no additional cost. You receive a guided visualization across 4 areas of life: financial, relational, health, and purpose. And you receive an infographic of the 5 most important daily habits for building the life you are building, designed to be printed and placed somewhere you will see it. All of that with a full money-back guarantee. No conditions, no explanation required. If you use it and you do not feel any shift in clarity or perception, you receive every dollar back. The risk is not on your side. And for those of you who are weighing the $39 right now, I want to say something directly. I understand. $39 is real money, especially in the season you are in. You are not wrong to think carefully about it. But I want to offer you one comparison. 1 session of biofeedback therapy, $300. 1 weekend mindfulness retreat, often $200 or more. An annual subscription to a mindfulness app you open 3 times, close to $100. When you divide $39 across a full year, you are talking about less than 11 cents a day. 11 cents a day. For the potential, not the guarantee, but the genuine potential to reclaim the neural clarity that was always yours, that you were born with, that the system gradually suppressed, and that your season of formation has been preparing the rest of you to fully use. One more thing I need to tell you about this. There are counterfeit versions of the Genius Song circulating online. I want to be very direct about this, because I have seen people purchase what looks like the same product from other sources and receive something that does not contain the actual brain entrainment technology. It looks similar, it may even sound similar, but without the specific frequency engineering embedded in the original, it is just an audio file with no functional effect. The only source that carries the complete brain entrainment technology, all 4 bonuses, and the full money-back guarantee is the link I have placed in the description and the pinned comment of this video. Do not search for it on Amazon. Do not look for it on YouTube, Spotify, or any other platform. The only place where you will receive the genuine product with everything it includes is the link that is waiting for you below this video. If you feel called to explore this, if something in this conversation has resonated and you want to experience what restored gamma clarity feels like in your daily life, in your perception, in your ability to move with confidence through this final season of preparation, the link is there. It will be there when you are ready. And if now is not the right moment for that, if that is not where you are today, that is completely all right. Because here is what I want you to hold more than anything else about this conversation. The clarity you are seeking is not foreign to you. It is not something that belongs to other people. It is not something you have to earn or manufacture from scratch. It is something that was already yours, that has been temporarily suppressed, and that this season, the formation, the character development, the preparation has been building the rest of the vessel to receive it back in full. The tool is an accelerator, not a creator. What is being accelerated is something that was always yours. Now let me bring all of it together. All 5 revelations, all 5 character qualities, the sacred strategy, the gamma frequency, the formation season. because I want you to see the whole picture at once, the full landscape of what has been happening and why, before we reach the moment this entire message has been building toward. In the first revelation, we established the truth about your season, that it is not a waiting room, that it is not punishment, that it is formation, the active, intentional construction of a vessel that can hold what is coming without losing it. We saw it in Joseph's story. We saw it in the 3 lies that circulate around financial waiting. We named the 5 external signs that tell you where you are in the pattern. In the second revelation, we went underneath the surface and named the 2 internal forces that create a ceiling on incoming provision, the control pattern and the unworthiness ceiling. We introduced the gamma frequency and the decline effect, and we began to see why the chosen one is specifically impacted. We gave you a practical way to begin identifying and releasing those energy leaks. In the third revelation, we went deeper into the gamma science and mapped it against Ruth's story, the foreign field, the unexpected source, the provision that arrived not through strategy, but through presence and preparation. We gave you the tool for widening the channel, and we began to understand that the neural frequency of the prepared mind is as important as the spiritual readiness of the prepared heart. In the fourth revelation, we named the 5 character qualities that are present in every person who receives large and unexpected provision and holds it, and we mapped each one to what has been built in you through your formation season. We named the sacred strategy. We identified who you are in this story, and now, in this final revelation, the one that everything else was pointing to, we are going to bring it all the way to the surface. The provision is not late. The provision is on time, because every single thing that needed to be in place before it arrived is either fully built or completing its final stage of construction right now. The humility is there, tested and real. The generosity posture is there, maintained through scarcity, which is the only way it becomes genuine. The discernment is there, sharpened by seasons where the margin for error was small. The emotional regulation is there, pressed in by years of staying centered while the circumstances were pulling at you. The identity stability is there, forged in the wilderness where the stripping away left only what was real. And the gamma frequency, the neural equipment that will allow you to perceive the unexpected channel when it appears, to recognize the unusual source when it arrives, to move with precision when the moment comes that is being restored. Everything is in place. And the most important truth I want you to carry from this moment forward is this: you are not waiting for the provision to make you ready. You are already ready. The provision is waiting for you to know that. Sit with that for a moment. Not the provision waiting for you to earn it, not waiting for you to believe hard enough, not waiting for you to do one more thing, become one more version, prove one more quality. Waiting for you to know, to carry inside you, as settled fact, as received truth, as something that does not need tomorrow's evidence to confirm what today already holds, that you are ready, that you are the one this season was building, that what is coming has your name on it. And I want to take you one level deeper still, because there is a dimension of the provision we have not fully addressed yet. A dimension that I think changes the weight of what you are receiving, not just in terms of its size, but in terms of its meaning. The provision that is coming to you is not just for you. I want to say that again, because I think it carries more than we sometimes allow it to. The provision that is moving toward your life is not just for you. You are the cycle breaker, the scarcity pattern that was inherited the way your family, your bloodline, your community has related to abundance for generations. It was not meant to continue through you. You are the turning point, the generation where the pattern reverses. But reversal does not happen through wishing, it happens through resource. What is coming to you carries the potential to change the trajectory of people whose names you already know. Your children, if you have them. Your parents, if they are still here. your siblings, your community, the people in your circle who are watching to see whether this kind of provision is real, because if it is real for you, it becomes believable for them. And beyond the people you know, the impact of provision that is stewarded by a person who has been formed by a wilderness season extends much further than any of us can see from where we are standing. Because the chosen one who receives as the builder does not just accumulate, they construct. They use what arrives as foundation material, as infrastructure, as the first timber of something that will outlast them. And the ripple of that building, the lives that are touched by what you build, with what you receive, that is the real measurement of what unexpected provision in the hands of a prepared chosen one can do. So when you receive what is coming, I want you to hold it with both hands, not tightly, not with the grip of scarcity, but with the deliberate, intentional, open-palmed receiving of a steward who knows exactly what they are holding and why. And I want you to receive it knowing that the reason it came, the full reason, the complete reason, is not just the meeting of your personal need. It is the beginning of a chapter whose story is still being written. In just a moment, we are going to reach the place I have been building toward all along. The declaration, the activation, the sealing of everything that has been spoken here into the real, lived, daily experience of who you are and what is coming to you. And I promised you that the reason this message was placed in front of you today is not just the information, not just the revelations, not just the understanding, as important as all of that is. The reason is what comes next. Stay with me. Chosen one, before I speak what I am about to speak over your life, I want to give you something to carry into every day that follows this one. Not a feeling, not just an experience, a practice. Because the person who walks out of a message like this one and returns to the same mental habits, the same internal dialogue, the same posture toward provision, that person will feel the shift of today and then watch it gradually fade as the circumstances reassert themselves. I do not want that to happen to you. So, I want to give you a very specific, very daily, very practical way of living from what we have established here. It has 3 parts, and none of them require anything more than the mind you are carrying right now. The first part is what I call the receiving declaration. Every morning before you check a number, before you look at what is in your account, before the circumstances of your financial season have a chance to set the tone of your day, I want you to do one thing. In the quiet of whatever your first waking moments look like, I want you to take one breath, and as you exhale, say this inside yourself, not out loud unless you want to, just inside. I am the prepared vessel. The provision is already in motion. I receive it from every direction my source chooses to send it. That is it. One breath, one declaration, every morning. What that does, what it does practically, neurologically, in terms of the pattern we have been discussing, is this. It sets the aperture of your receiving before the circumstances set it for you. It reminds your nervous system, before it has a chance to enter survival mode for the day, that it is operating in receiving mode instead. Small practice, enormous shift over time. The second part is what I call the channel check. Once during your day, it does not matter when. It can be as brief as 60 seconds. I want you to pause and ask yourself one question. What is the most unexpected thing that happened today? Who did I speak to that I did not expect to speak to? What arrived that I did not plan for? Not looking for miracles. Not grading every conversation on whether it contained your breakthrough. Just practicing the habit of noticing the unexpected. Because the mind that has been trained to notice the unexpected becomes more skilled at it over time. And the more skilled it becomes, the less likely it is to be in the wrong room, looking at the wrong door, when the provision arrives through the window. You are training your perception to stay wide. The third part is the seed practice. One small act of generosity. every day. Not necessarily financial, a kind word given freely. Time offered without expecting something in return. A share of something you value, attention, encouragement, information extended to someone who needs it. The channel that practices giving is the channel that stays open for receiving, not as transaction, as the law of the living system. A river that only receives eventually stagnates. The river that gives as it receives stays alive, stays clear, stays moving. These three practices, the receiving declaration, the channel check, the seed practice, are the daily form of everything we have discussed. They are how the formation becomes embodied, how the understanding becomes lifestyle, how what was heard in this message continues to work in you long after the last word is spoken. And now we have reached the place this entire message was always moving toward. Everything you have carried through this season, every prayer that felt like it landed somewhere but nothing visible changed, every morning you woke up and chose to stay faithful anyway, every moment you held the knowing privately while the circumstances were saying something different, all of it has been bringing you to exactly here. And I am going to speak what needs to be spoken, not as performance, not as spiritual routine, as the honest, grounded, fully believed declaration of who you are and what is moving toward you. Chosen one, I want you to receive what I am about to say, not as words from a screen, but as something that found you today, because something larger than coincidence decided you needed to hear it. We begin with gratitude. I am grateful for every season that brought you here, for the hard ones that built what nothing easy could have built, for the silent ones that pressed the formation deeper than the loud seasons ever could, for the seasons of waiting that felt like being forgotten and were actually the most intentional preparation of all. Thank you for the wilderness, not because it was comfortable, because of what it produced. Thank you for the nights that were too honest for performance, for the mornings that required a trust that was not supported by evidence, for the grace that held this chosen one when they were running low on everything except the quiet knowing that this was not the end of the story. We receive this season with gratitude, not spite, not relief alone, gratitude for the whole of it. And now I want to acknowledge something. The source that orchestrated this season has seen everything, seen the weight you carried when no one was watching, seen the generous decisions you made when generosity cost you, seen the moments when you almost stopped believing and then chose to believe one more time, without any new evidence, without any visible reason, just the stubborn, quiet, unperformable faithfulness of someone who is called. That faithfulness was seen, every single instance of it, and what the source sees, the source does not waste. Now I want you to do something in your mind. Imagine that you are holding a bag, and in that bag is everything you have been carrying that does not belong in the next chapter of your story. The fear that the provision has forgotten your address. The belief, buried deep, that large abundance belongs to someone else. The scarcity pattern that came before you. The ceiling you have been unknowingly enforcing on your own life. The shame of needing. The embarrassment of not having, the grip on how and when the provision is supposed to arrive, the unworthiness that whispers that you are the exception to every promise. See that bag clearly, feel the weight of it. And now, set it down, not because you are pretending those things are not real, but because they were never yours to carry into what is coming. Set it down, right here, right now. Release the fear that the provision has forgotten your address. Release it. Release the belief that large abundance belongs to someone else. Release it. Release the scarcity pattern that came before you and was never meant to continue through you. Release it. Release the ceiling you have been enforcing on your own life without knowing it. Release it. Release the shame of the hard season. Release it. Release the grip on how it comes and when it comes, and through which door it arrives. Release it. Release the comparison that has been measuring your timeline against someone else's story. Release it. Release the unworthiness that has been whispering that you are the one the promises skip. Release it. Release the old story that says you are still who you were at the beginning of this season. Release it. Release everything that belongs in the past and not in the future. Release it all. Now, in the space that releasing creates, I am calling something forward. I am calling forward the full version of who you are, not the version that has been shaped by the strain of the long season, not the version that has been managing and surviving and waiting, the version that was always true, that the wilderness was always building, that the provision is already moving toward. I am calling forward your full perceptive capacity, the clarity, the intuition, the ability to see the unexpected channel before it fully announces itself, the neural frequency that elevated, native, God-given gamma that was yours from the beginning, and that this season has been preparing the vessel to receive back in full. I am calling forward the discernment that can see through the noise to the signal, the identity that does not need the provision to know its own worth, the generosity that multiplies what passes through its hands. I am calling forward the seer in you, the one who has always perceived what others could not see and who is about to need that gift more than ever, because what is coming is approaching from a direction no one is watching. I am calling forward the cycle breaker, the one who stands at the turning point of a scarcity story and says, "Not through me, not anymore, not in this generation." I am calling forward the builder, the one who knows that what is coming is not an ending. It is the beginning of a construction project whose blueprints were drawn long before the materials arrived. I am calling forward the deliverer, the one who creates financial freedom in the places where there was none, whose provision, received and stewarded and multiplied, extends far past their own circumstances and touches lives they will never fully know. I am calling forward the light bearer, the one who understands that resource, like light, does not diminish by being shared, that the more it moves, the more it multiplies, and that the brightness of what they carry is directly proportional to how freely they let it flow. And now I want to open what has been held closed. Every door that was shut to redirect, not to reject, I speak those channels open in the right timing. Every conversation that is about to happen that will carry the provision in its pocket, I declare that the ears that need to hear will be open and the words that need to be spoken will come without effort. Every unexpected source, every unlikely connection, every channel that no one has been watching, I declare that the chosen one who is listening to this message right now is positioned to receive from all of them. The provision has their address. It has always had their address. It is in motion right now, and it is arriving on time. I cover this chosen one's rising from the things that would diminish it before it is established, from voices that cannot hold the vision, from relationships that would pull back toward the old ceiling, from the part of their own mind that might try, in the week after this message, to argue them back to the familiar level. I cover the generosity posture that the channel that has been practiced in giving would remain wide open as the receiving increases, so that what flows in multiplies by flowing out, and what flows out creates a harvest that far exceeds what the original river carried. I cover the formation that has been built that it would hold, that the vessel would not crack under the weight of what it was built to carry, that the 5 qualities forged in the wilderness would be fully operational in the season of abundance. And now, this is the moment. I am the one this season was preparing. I am the prepared vessel, and the provision is already in motion toward me. I am the seer. I have always perceived what others could not see, and I see clearly now. I am the cycle breaker. The scarcity pattern ends with me. The story turns in my generation. I am the builder. What is coming is foundation material, and I will build with it in a way that outlasts me and reaches further than I can currently see. I am the deliverer, I create freedom in the places where there was none. And what arrives in my hands will flow through my hands and create freedom for others. I am the light bearer. My provision multiplies by moving, and I hold it with open hands. We are chosen ones who carry abundance as a calling, not a personal acquisition. We do not receive for ourselves alone. We receive as the turning point of every story that came before us, and as the foundation of every story that comes after. The unexpected is not strange to us. It is our language. What is coming has our name on it, and we are ready to receive it without destroying it, without minimizing it, and without walking past it when it arrives. We are ready. It is done. It is sealed. We receive it. And so it is.